Hey everybody, it's John Ray with a special treat for you today. I've got our lead developer, Mikkel, here, and we're going to be talking about how NFTREASURE got to this point, what we've built so far, and what the future looks like for this project. Mikkel has been a godsend for us. I get a lot of the credit for being, on the front lines and communicating a lot of the stuff that goes on in this project. But Mikkel has been a confidant and somebody who's such a good systems thinker when it comes to structuring not only the technicals of what our smart contracts and code look like, but he has an incredible perspective on what it looks like to build a business in this startup environment and how we can leverage all of the technology that we've been creating behind the scenes in NFTREASURE for bigger and better, tapping into some of the larger trends that are emerging right now. So Mikkel, you can wave your hand and I'll give a little bit more introduction, and then I want to let you kind of give your own spiel on who you are. But Mikkel joined the project in mid-December, and in many ways, I was very distraught at this period of time because we had done all of this work with an old development team that basically got burnt out and ghosted us to some extent. And Mikkel kind of came in and retooled the whole thing and took what had really felt like a pulling an elephant up a hill and broke it down to its core pieces and allowed us to move much quicker, which is why you saw from January to February so much progress got done and we were able to launch successfully. And we've got to give almost all of that credit to Mikkel and to Joe, who were the team of developers that stepped in to pick up those pieces and make sure that we as a community had something that we could be proud of. So, Mikkel, why don't you introduce yourself and give the community a little bit of your background so they understand where you're coming from. And then we've got a bunch of different points that we want to go through on the future of NFTREASURE and how we plan on working together to achieve that. So, hey, Mikkel.
Hey, yeah, so excited to be doing this video. It's been, I've been trying to focus as much on the code as possible to get done with the first phase, but I've been thinking last few months like introducing myself to the community and also, just stepping up and having more of a face. Um, so a little bit about me. Uh, I'm a programmer by trade, but now when people ask what I do, I'm just like, I guess I'm a technologist, or if they're a little bit more sophisticated, I say like I'm in innovation. So I have a varied background. I've worked in academia, I've worked in corporate innovation, and I've done quite a lot of startups. Um, the kind of the core theme through all of that stuff is taking systems approaches and particularly looking at how we can use data and AI in order to develop new insights. And then I've gotten really heavily into as well the customer side and the business growing side. How do you look at what strategic opportunities are from the bottom up of seeing where unmet customer needs are, and then being able to develop something to that and iterate and grow. So that's a little bit about me. Um, when it comes to crypto, I've been crypto adjacent for a very long time. I knew about Bitcoin, I think in like February 2009, so a few months after it was launched. I'll be honest and say I didn't think it was going to amount to anything because uh, the way I was exposed to it was through anarcho-libertarians. And they're like, oh, this is going to change the whole world because we won't need like any sort of banks or governments or anything. And so on one hand, I think the ethos, I was correct in the ethos of what what the impact of the world. But on the other hand, I was like, oh, it's just this funny internet money. It won't go anywhere with these libertarians. So I'll admit to that. But I was also aware of Ethereum before it even launched, before the ICO. I was talking to the team and I was thinking about building on it. But for that, I have a fatal flaw, which is I really care about real world value. And so when I talked to the team and understood how Ethereum worked, I was like, well, this is clearly there's going to be bugs that lead to losing like billions of dollars for people, and you can't really fix them or do anything around that. So I don't think I really want to participate in that because I don't want to lose billions of dollars. Um, but I think this is going to be amazing. Like I think this is going to be massive, and um, so that one, it was clear to me it was going to take off. Um, but what I'm really interested in with crypto and blockchain is the potential of yes, the technology, but also what it represents in terms of I hate the word decentralization, but but all that stuff and what you can build on top of that in terms of the social system and business structures and things like that. And so um, I've been following this space for quite a few years, and then in the last few years, I've been comfortable in saying, okay, it's mature to the point that I can jump in and do things, and so that's where we are now.
Yeah, and I think something that is really good for the community to understand is that, in many industries, but crypto specifically, it's very hard to find a developer that isn't just mercenary in their mindset. So many of the developers that we were working with before Mikkel were just there for a paycheck, and to some extent they enjoyed working on the project, but they weren't really thinking about it beyond the hours that they were being paid for. And Mikkel and I, since we've been working together, have a deep philosophical sync. We talk about a lot of things that are outside of the project, and really what we're looking for is directionally, like how do we fit ourselves into something that is actually going to benefit the world and creators and the ecosystems that are emerging, rather than just trying to do the lowest common denominator down and dirty thing in order to deliver what we said we were going to deliver and then be done with it and on to the next thing. And so to some extent what we're going to be talking about today is all that we've achieved within NF Treasure, but then we do want to share a larger vision that we have for where we think this can go, and some of the things that we've been discussing in the background that give everybody in NF Treasure more potential at extracting value from the technology stack that we have, and really being able to use this tool set in order to either create a side hustle or a full-time gig for yourself as a creator or a creator brand. So maybe a good place for us to start, Mikkel, is, you know, tell us the when you came into NF Treasure, tell us kind of what you saw and what your perceptions were, and then over the last 6 months, what has been built, and kind of how did you retool things to be directionally focused in the right way, so that not only would we deliver what we said we were going to deliver, but we would have fertile ground to be able to keep building and growing.
Yeah, so originally when you brought me on the project, it wasn't to be the dev. I want to make that
Right.
clear. You were more interested in my perspective on what the projects could become and the value proposition. And Joe as well, he wasn't originally going to be a developer on it either, even though he is one. But then when you had the circumstances with the other dev team and Joe stepped up to help with that, he started talking to me about some things and, you know, wrote me in. So what I can say was, you know, the current state of the code when I came in was like everything was 98% there, but there's critical issues that from a security perspective, from a performance perspective, from a maintainability perspective, were critical flaws. And some of that, fortunately, your community pointed out like some of the smart contract issues, before it would launch. But there are also some things in terms of the rest of the architecture that, while not to the same level, would have really pigeonholed you into a specific thing. And so my whenever I come into a project, I try to do as little as possible while also having the quality that is necessary. And so I ended up having to rewrite probably 80% of the smart contracts, um, because there were some issues. And some of those issues in the way it was written, no one even knew what it meant. So we couldn't even say it was correct or not. So I simplified a lot of it. I rewrote a lot of the game as well in order to address a bunch of performance issues and some maintainability issues. So that's kind of where things were at. That's what I was doing in that 2 months between mid-December and our launch in February. Since that point, I've been focused along with Joe on two things. One is, well, really three things. One is creating um, the e-commerce of what it needs to be according to deliver on the NFTREASURE vision. And the second aspect is playing around with the NFC part of making just the bare minimum so we can just start demonstrating that to people and getting some things going there. There's a whole bunch of legacy stuff from you doing your best of piecing together from all these different services and all these different teams that once again, it's like, it looked like it's 95% there, but in reality, when push came to shove, like you couldn't get the final pieces to stick together. So I'll talk about that in a second. And then of course, all this was in the backdrop of trying to keep the game going and doing all the performance optimizations and all those things and doing my best to get some time to address any tickets that were raised. So that's basically what we've been doing. I'm going to jump to the point of where we're actually at now. Where we're actually at now is I've pretty much rewritten, or I've written from scratch an e-commerce platform. And this sounds ridiculous because there's other e-commerce platforms, but the problem is the best one in terms of Shopify have really locked down their entire system to the point that it's almost impossible to add in new things that we need for in terms of the blockchain and other sort of things. And the other ones like WooCommerce and things, the performance is so terrible, it's just a nothing. So basically what happened was Joe and I were trying to do the minimum amount possible. And then as bit by bit, everyone's like, well, we'll have to do this thing. And we ended up creating an entire platform.
Yeah, and
And
just to give a little bit more context there, so in order to be able to deliver on all the things that we said and basically create a proof of concept that started to bring revenue in, on the e-commerce side, we ended up daisy chaining a bunch of different tools together and basically linking them via API, et cetera. And so on the front end, everything appeared to be working, but anytime we wanted to customize something, it was very difficult to add in new customizations because that daisy chain of things being duct taped together was pretty brittle and would break anytime we tried to add something new. Add to that Shopify does not like crypto projects and was constantly threatening to shut us down. And then constantly changing their API so that every time we tried to do something with prize season, something would break because something on their end changed. All of this created so much friction and us kind of spinning our wheels so much that we realized that there was an opportunity to build something that reduced all of that friction and noise for people that wanted to do what we were doing, which was things like NFT couponing, NFT gating, having our own creator tool that we actually had some creative control over. So moving to a custom e-commerce platform that eventually got built from scratch kind of came on the heels of us attempting to do all of these other things and use these existing tools, and in the process realizing that there was probably a market for something that just threw all of that away and threw all of the excess stuff that comes with those tools and stripped it down to the parts that was going to make a creator or a creator brand most successful.
Exactly. And it's ironic because Shopify itself, that's how it got formed. They were just trying to sell snowboards and all the ones they were trying to use weren't fit for purpose, and so they ended up writing their own. Um, so history just, repeats.
Yes. So, and this happens this is how a lot of, products end up getting built, is because you try to use what's in the existing marketplace, it doesn't work, and so then you have to do your own thing. So I'm kind of foreshadowing towards this larger opportunity that we see. But before we get into that, maybe another thing that you and I have had a lot of conversation about is the startup market as a whole versus startups within crypto. And there's some unique challenges specifically to building something in crypto. And I think it might be interesting for the community to hear your perspective on, how we can take the best of both worlds and kind of synthesize those into something that ultimately allows us to move ahead with greater opportunity available to us. So do you want to maybe talk about the difference in how things get built in the startup world versus crypto, and some of the flaws in that you see in that setup?
Yeah, so before I do that, I just want to make very clear of where we currently are at.
Yeah.
Um, so something that I love about John is he's great at selling, but he also doesn't like to promise things, like overpromise.
Yes.
The thing I hate about John is he can be very conservative about what he shares. So where we're at is we're in the final stages of this website rebuild. We have all of the features, 99% implemented, and we're putting the final polish on some of the last pieces. And we'll be starting first some beta testing soon within the community. But very soon after that, we should be in a point to be able to launch. And so that's why we're having this conversation now, because um, we can say with a lot of confidence we're almost at the finish line for this phase. And so we've been thinking more about the next phase and how to roll that over.
Yeah. And
Um,
one of the big things that Mikkel has been working on is basically building a new product creator tool. We're using a tool that we basically bought a license to, but we don't have a lot of creative control over being able to optimize it or build new things. It's also built on top of WordPress, which is an inherently slow database, and so it's caused a lot of problems, and it's made it so that our NFT sync and our ability to easily onboard people into the product creator is just very low. And that has provided friction when we're running ads, because there's a drop off rate that is not ideal. And so the new product creator tool removes a lot of that onboarding friction, and makes it a lot easier for us to create NFT sync and to make it so, right now you can only see the first 20 of your NFTs. In this new version, you can search for NFTs and things are categorized by project. And so we've really incorporated all of the feedback that we've gotten over the last 6 months, which has been incredible coming from the community. And that's kind of the value of building in community, is that we have this hive mind that's constantly bubbling information up to us that we can then prioritize based on what we think is going to make the product most successful. And so the new product creator tool, I think, is going to, just at an e-commerce level, allow us to grow our revenue significantly because we'll be able to onboard people directly into the product creator tool. It's much more intuitive to use. It's easier to do NFT sync, but the whole focus isn't NFTs. We can also onboard normies who just want to use it to do image creation, and so anyhow, a lot of time, effort, and care has gone into thinking about kind of the intuitive flow of that tool. And that is something that has essentially been built from scratch using some base level engines. And I think it's going to be one of many unique features that we have just at the e-commerce level. And so the goal is obviously to continue growing e-commerce revenue as we continue to partner with all of these different crypto projects. And as you saw in the August update that I did, our revenue numbers last month were pretty great because we were able to sell some of this larger vision to a partner who is still redacted because I'm under NDA with them. So we'll announce that when the time comes right and when they're ready to launch. But they were really interested in the things that we have upcoming in this platform. And then, of course, one of the big things that they signed on for was a unique NFC experience and being able to authenticate these physical assets that we're creating for them. And we have built our own NFC system that can be utilized for a lot of different things. And one of the things that I've been focused on doing is really trying to take all of the things that we could do and all of the use cases that are potentially available and try to fine tune those into some simplified messaging that really allows us to stretch our legs and run. And so Mikkel has been a good springboard for helping me understand when I'm being too crypto focused, which I think is the focus of NFTREASURE, versus seeing the larger opportunity and building towards that larger opportunity. So is there anything else you want to talk about as far as what we've built before we go into kind of the difference between building something as a startup versus just delivering in crypto?
No, I mean, I think, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be showing plenty of things. So, I think just for people to understand where we're at is good for now.
Yeah, cool. So one of the things that we've been thinking about, I just joined a mastermind that is all about rapidly prototyping, and really the premise is that VCs are no longer funding just a PowerPoint presentation. It used to be that you could have a really strong pitch and somebody would give you $7 million and then you would spend 18 months maybe building something, but probably not. And then you would ask for a second round so that you could get another 18 months. That's not really happening right now. There's been a reduction in the amount of VC investment, and what this new mastermind that I'm in is talking about is the model that VCs are looking for now is community-led products. And what they mean by that is they want to invest in something that already has shown some kind of product market fit, be it because you've been able to attract a community, and then you're using that community to bubble up good ideas from the hive mind and essentially figure out where the right gap in the marketplace to fill is. And so in many ways, NFTREASURE has been doing this new model that VCs are interested in for the last 3 years, really, and in the last 6 months at an accelerated pace. And so I'm in this mastermind to shake hands, kiss babies, do some networking, and see what opportunities might be able to come from that. But a conversation that stems out of thinking about things from, okay, how do we bootstrap something as a crypto project versus how do we lull VC investment into something? Those are philosophically kind of different ways of thinking about a product roadmap. So do you want to maybe walk us through some of that, Mikkel?
Yeah, totally. So one thing that I'll say is what I'm about to contrast is applicable for startups in general, even if it's not VC funded. So, really the thing that is great about crypto is the sophistication of a lot of the people involved, particularly in this community. not necessarily in all communities, but in this community. So like when you guys are sending me like tickets of like errors, you're like, oh yeah, I went into the JavaScript console and here's the exact thing. And I'll be like, oh, that makes it easy. Um, and just that understanding of and detail orientedness is really amazing to build in. Because most of the time when you're building for people, they're like the level of feedback you get is like, oh, I like it or I don't like it.
Right.
And most of the time they say I like it and then they don't use it. So
Yeah.
um so that part's great. Some of the challenge within the crypto um as a culture is people talk about real world utility, but real world utility is not the focus of the culture, crypto culture as a whole.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these basic things, such as like, what problem are you trying to solve? Who is going to use it? Are you sure that they're going to keep using it as opposed to it just being a flash in the pan? Those things don't really factor into most crypto projects because most crypto projects are either infrastructure where they're like, well, we're just building it for devs and it will just stay here for a long time, or they're just fly by night, pump your bags,
Yeah.
and there's not really trying to solve any real world thing. So some of the expectations and some of the just the measurement of what a successful project looks like is not aligned with building a successful business,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily the same thing as building a token that's worth,
Yeah.
that goes up a lot. So the reason why I've really enjoyed working on this project is because it has a lot of this stuff I really admire about the potential of the crypto blockchain sort of stuff. And John has basically over years condensed the community into the true believers of producing, the potential for real world value, and people are getting excited about it, very excited about it.
Yeah. And
And
that's no more evident than when somebody uses NF Treasure for the first time to buy a Salver t-shirt or a Pangolin t-shirt, and they pay for it in crypto, and then they immediately tweet, "Crypto is real. I used it for something." And so that's a really satisfying tweet for me to read, because it showcases that we did build something that actually has utility. And I want to take a quick step back before you continue. Like, one of the things that has maybe gone unsaid, but I think I need to say out loud, is that ultimately NF Treasure, or what started as Project X, or what really started as Smartcoin, like this project was not designed to be a business in any way. It was a PR campaign because the old team didn't want people mad at them. And so we went in with completely backwards intentions to what building an actually successful product should look like. And because we got so much good feedback from the community, we've been able to cobble something together and slowly pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot towards a product market fit that actually has real world value. And I feel like we've delivered more than like 80 or 90% of crypto projects, as far as the actual infrastructure that we built and the bridge from the digital world into the physical world that makes this a real tangible thing. And so now, years later, that team is, tucked tail and run away a long time ago. We as a community are in a place where we no longer have to think about this as just a crypto project that is designed to make sure that people from Smartcoin aren't mad anymore. We're in a position where we can think about it as a real business. And now that we have legs and some revenue coming in, and a proof of concept, it's time for us to think about what is the actual business utility here, and how do we maximize what we've built in a really meaningful way, not just a pump and dump way, not just a hey, win marketing on the token, but how do we grow this into something that becomes a household name that people use for years to come? Because we're in a very similar position to what Shopify was in when they just started. They were trying to do something. There wasn't a good thing in the marketplace. They tried to use existing tools, and those tools were either too expensive or didn't do what they needed to do. So they just invented what they needed. And then they realized, as all of their friends were like, I want to do that, I want to do that, they realized that, oh, there's a product market fit here. And then we know the rest of the story. It's $100 billion brand now. So ultimately, I think it's good to recognize like the roots that we came from, and that there was a lot of tire spinning that happened while we moved out of being a PR project for Smartcoin into one that was an actual tangible business.
Yep. No, I mean that's a very good point to make. Um, so yeah, so I mean I think you nailed it. And something that I do want to underscore as well is not just us. Like I was talking to some friends who started talking to their friends, and combined we probably talked to 20 people that have stores on Shopify or WooCommerce, and all of them hated it for the exact same reasons that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So it's not just like we have a lack of imagination or that we have something super specific that no one else has these pain points. There are dominant pain points.
Yeah.
And so that's very interesting. And now we just have to figure out how to capitalize on that. And so the freedom that this project has had in order to find something that does have value. Now we're at the point where we can start looking and figuring out how to activate that. And that's really all I have to say about that at the moment.
Yeah, and so I think there's kind of a two-part goal moving forward that we have. One is obviously delivering on the promises of NFTREASURE, which has been to find ways to grow revenue in a meaningful way by attracting larger and larger partners, by getting people to do all of their merch fulfillment, through our fulfillment back end, by making building case studies around the NFC chip and selling that as a technology. All of those things are happening, and that's all of the work that we've done in throwing these events and meeting all of these people and making sure that key players in the ecosystem know who we are. That those seeds that have been planted over the last 6 months are now starting to bear fruit, and so we're in a really fun phase of the project where I expect that more and more of these larger partnerships that I've been basically teeing up since January are starting to come to fruition. And so there's two goals here. One is make sure that we can continue to build out whatever resources are required to field that new inflow of revenue that's coming from these partners and from these seeds that we've been planting all this time. But then there's a larger opportunity that is really, what we've been kind of playing in the sandbox on is like, what really is the product market fit above and beyond what we're talking about that reaches more than just a crypto audience that's looking to have a unique, thing that they can promote to their community and a high quality piece of merchandise. But what is the technological product market fit that speaks to the larger market of, Twitch streamers, YouTubers, people that have 100,000 or more followers on Twitter. All of these people are trying to monetize right now, and they're doing the same thing that we started to do, where they're trying to daisy chain a bunch of different things together, and really throwing noodles against the wall to see what works. And we're in a unique position where we've already thrown a lot of those noodles. We've built some customization around what we learned there, and we can now productize what we've created for NF Treasure in a way that speaks to a larger audience. So, anything in that you want to comment before we kind of move into what this larger core vision is?
Um, yeah, so basically what I'll say is a lot of successful startup stories have two parts to them. Part number one is exactly what we already talked about. I have a personal pain or a business pain that there's not a good thing for, so I built a solution. But that's not enough. Part number two, the second half of that is, and it fit into the larger whole of where the market was going, where the overall economy was going, and it caught the wave or a part of the wave of these trends that are emerging. And so when you put on like a VC hat or a sophisticated founder's hat, you combine those two aspects. You look for the micro, where the pains, and you look for the macro. What's going to unfold over the next 3 to 5 years? And how do we align with that? And so really the things that I've talked to you a lot about are the things that I have a background and skill set of understanding and being able to deliver on. Specifically, like I said in the beginning, I've been working with like big data and AI stuff for a few decades now. I've seen, I've literally been preparing for this moment for 2 decades because when I was in college, I was taking this class on AI, and my professor was one of the early pioneers of AI. And I saw the potential for AI to basically completely change all market relationships and fundamentally transform capitalism. And at the time, the best prediction of when AI would get practical to be able to do this was in the mid 2020s.
Mm.
And so I've had relationships, friendships with people building that are key AI researchers. I've um, I've worked in AI startups doing tooling around helping various aspects and things like that. And so I've been preparing for this moment. So that's one big thing I've been thinking about is what opportunities is AI providing?
Mm.
And then the second aspect is the the term that the collective term that's being used to describe what you were just talking about with all these different people is the creator economy.
Yeah.
And so that is another big trend. Like right now, the creator economy is $250 billion a year. Over the next 3 years, it's expected to double to 500 billion. And so it's this huge potential as people are getting turned off by the big platforms and seeking alternative ways um, to make their living. And so for the last few years, actually, I've also really been diving into that, really understanding those dynamics, engaging with a bunch of creators, looking at where pain points are and things like that. And it just so happened that when I started working with NFTREASURE, then that was one of the very first things when you asked me, you're like, well, here's this thing that's this like Frankenstein that we've cobbled together, what can we do with it? I was like, creator economy stuff. Like it's all about how you organize community and understand psychology of community, because that's the big pain point that creators have is they don't actually understand community. There's not the tools to actually like effectively tap into that understanding. So yeah, so those are kind of the two macro trends
Yeah.
that are going on.
Yeah, and I think when you think about like catching that wave or part of the wave, like one of the things that in many ways it's like, oh yeah, AI is an obvious wave to catch. The creator economy, if you've looked into it, you know that it's there, but I think a good lens into it for me is my girlfriend teaches second grade, and she asked all of her students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so when I was a kid, it was like astronaut, firefighter, police officer, and 80% of her kids in 2024 said that they want to be a YouTuber. And so, you know, we have this massive shift towards people, you know, gravitating towards a handful of people that are their news source, and there's an opportunity for so many people to step into that space, and they already are, and it's only going to continue at larger and larger acceleration. And I think, you know, what our conversations have made clear to me is that one of the things that AI is really good at is, one, helping optimize those opportunities, two, being really good at analyzing data in order to provide that optimization, and three, just providing some level of personalized curation on how creators can interact with their community, assess that feedback, and integrate it into their creative process. And so as we think about this larger opportunity, you know, that's kind of how I think those tools, and as we've discussed, those tools get woven together in a way that provides um, value above and beyond just being a Shopify store. It's like Shopify plus plus plus, where you're not only providing a mechanism for making a sale, but you're providing a meaningful way to engage with those customers that you're collecting and the communities that you're building, and then moving your ability to gain feedback from the digital world into the physical world and back. And we're uniquely positioned to offer that bridge because we already have this very unique NFC connected merchandise that can be applied to a whole myriad of physical products that then allow us to collect data in the real world and send that back into these digital systems for synthesis and optimization. So yeah, what else should we say about the creator economy and why this is the thing that we want to position towards?
Well, I mean, there's two things I want to briefly mention. So the first part is we're basically seeing platform rot over the last few years because as everything about social media is becoming much more political, there is a lot more pressure on all actors to um, enforce certain dynamics on those platforms. And so there's all these people that are getting demonetized on YouTube for all sorts of reasons. You know, um, Twitter, I'll just always call it Twitter, was just banned in Brazil,
Yeah.
for instance. Um, and so basically and there's a case actually with it that they just ruled against um TikTok actually, that an algorithm could be a parent could sue because their child committed suicide based off of content that TikTok showed them. And while this historically would have been thrown out, um, the judge actually ruled that it could proceed for reasons I'm not going to go into right now. So just as you're having all of these external things going on, you also have the fall of advertising centric internet where everyone has like ad blockers now. More and more people have tracking cookies disabled. They're looking at even like basically banning tracking cookies, etc. So the fundamental structure of the internet is going away on the business perspective. And so all of these people, it's not just that there's a lot of people, but all these people are scrambling to find a business model that works. And you have so many people now that are trying to make a living doing this that it's very, very hard to stand out. And so if you look at like the success of Substack or some of these like communities sort of tools that have developed over the last 4 or 5 years, it's all about the creators owning their communities, being able to have a singular voice. And in one level, those trends are really good, but in another level, it's creating massive fragmentation. So the reason why, I'm like 41, so I came of age like right as the internet was forming, and the internet used to be extremely fragmented. And the reason why these first portals and then eventually social media became the portal. The reason why that was aggregating everything is because it made it easier to navigate for a time. And now that's getting pulled apart. And so now you're having this fragmentation. And so it's much easier for many creators to make a living than they did before. But now from a user perspective, it's very difficult to actually find anyone, and that's going to increase as more and more people are pulling their main content off of platforms. And so there's actually a term for this. It's called bundling. So in tech in general, there's these long phases where you're either bundling or unbundling. And so bundling is basically taking a bunch of different features that are spread across multiple programs or services and putting them together all in one place to make it easy. And then unbundling is when there's basically the dynamics have changed for some reason, often technological and social, then these old dominant platforms are no longer relevant. And so then there's all these little services start springing up that flourish that focus on one thing. And that's the unbundling. And so right now we're seeing a lot of unbundling, but it's becoming very unwieldy for both creators to manage things across a lot of services and for increasingly for people to find things. And so it's how I see AI overall is AI is basically has the opportunity to be a bundler, but do things from a very individualistic or personalized perspective where you're not beholden to the platforms. And so ultimately speaking, a lot of the values of Web3 in terms of like owning your own stuff, in terms of like blockchain, being value neutral, et cetera, one of the hardest things about engaging with Web3 is that it's all unbundled.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two, it has terrible UX. Like people just have not pulled in the right designers to actually do it properly. And so what I see is I see the opportunity for AI to provide a much better UX and actually pull these things together. And so while there's certain aspects that we built out that aren't quote blockchain for performance reasons and cost reasons, it's still within the ethos of Web3 and the purpose there. And then it's saying, okay, now how do we actually make something on top of that that's usable, number one, and two, will have widespread appeal. And so that's basically my core hypothesis there.
Yeah, and I've the Coop, for those of you who follow Coop, who's one of the community managers for Avalanche, he posted on Twitter a real simple one-line tweet that got a lot of traction, but he was basically saying that the problem with crypto marketing is that nobody likes crypto. And for those of us who are like totally locked in and all in on crypto, I think we sometimes forget that 99% of the rest of the world still thinks that it's a scam, be it because there's not rules around it, be it because the only messaging that they get about it is when something goes wrong. And so that they don't necessarily see all of the innovation. And so as I read through all of the different comments on that post, one of the things that was obvious was that there is a need to move away from a lot of the crypto specific language where you're still utilizing the ethos of Web3 and the value in decentralized ownership and all of these things that Web3 offers without having to directly reference the tech. It's like when we used to call it MP3s and wave files, and Apple said, no, why don't you just buy music? And,
Yep, exactly.
and so I think we're in that phase of Web3 where we're moving away from the technical labels, because for those of us who are building in the space, we know what everything is. And so to reach a larger consumer base, there has to be somewhat of a rebranding around these teams where or around these things where you're utilizing the tech without making the tech the end all be all focus. The benefit that the tech offers should be the focus.
Yeah, and this is actually a very, very well described phenomenon across all technologies. So there's um, and it's kind of become a meme in crypto, like understanding the hype cycle.
Mm,
Um, but most people just talk about the hype cycle in terms of price. They don't actually talk about what it means. And that is typically you have in all new technologies that get adopted, you have the visionaries that see some sort of underlying need that other people aren't seeing. And then they build a technical solution to address that need. And then as it starts taking off, there's a massive amount of hype about what that's going to mean society and the speed of adoption. And then you get these massive bubbles.
mm,
And then when that doesn't come to pass, then you have a pop and you get into what they call the trough of disillusionment. And then most people move on and they say, like, oh, that technology failed. But in actuality, what happens is in that period, people go and they actually um, because if they've correctly seen how society is evolving, then more and more people are actually having those problems become present. They're no longer theoretical. They're now like present problems. And so then the places that um a lot of times new entrants are like, well, we can just reframe this tech for the problems that actually exist, and then it gets adoption, and then by the time it's actually gets mass adoption, a lot of times everyone's forgotten about the journey, and a lot of times all the vocabulary and all the framing has changed, and it's moved away from the engineers who normally drive the first wave into um, business people and others, or for better and worse, and that's how things go. And so what's happening? Like everyone's been talking about Web3, about like decentralization, censorship resistant, have owning your own stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Most of this stuff was like theoretical to the vast majority of people. But for the people that actually were like sufficiently paranoid that to them it was a real thing, like they're going all in. And then these things blow up into, NFTs and Beamcoin and all of that disconnection from the actual underlying thing. 99% of people don't, don't hear about that. Or if they do hear about it, they're like, why would I need that? Whereas now there's like millions of people that are like, oh, I just got deplatformed because because there was I saw one thing, there was 5 seconds of like of music that happened to be recorded as they were live streaming, and they like demonetized them. They didn't even play it. And so like, oh, I just got deplatformed. I just got X, and they're like, if only there was some sort of solution to so I could own my own stuff and like get value
Yeah.
out of that. And so that's the point we're at right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think you already see, the brands and the platforms that are, moving towards that opportunity are really bringing in a massive amount of revenue, things like Patreon or Substack. But they're still very narrow in what they can do, and they're not
yep,
really providing any meaningful feedback to the creator on who their audience actually is. And so
right.
maybe this is the right time to kind of form publicly like what our hypothesis is, which is, essentially that these creators, rather than going to a Shopify, which is kind of like jumping on a cruise ship and trying to have to figure out of all of this stuff, what do I actually need here? And so Shopify has become such a behemoth that anytime you want to do something, there's a ton of lead time. You almost have to hire a developer to be able to work with Shopify in any kind of meaningful way, unless you're just using the surface level features. What people want is they want to be in a speedboat again. They don't want to have to wait for that cruise ship to turn. They want something that just works, that gives them the experience that they're looking for, and that provides, meaningful feedback that allows them to pivot quickly based on what their audience is telling them. So I'll pause there. Like, anything else that you would add to that part of the hypothesis, that these creators that we've kind of been building the case for over the last 20 minutes or so, they're looking for something that allows them to create more capital with less sweat and initial investment on their part. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so the key problems are that the idea of a creator as a multi-channel independent person is a very new concept. It's only been around for a few years. And so there's not yet many solutions that creators can use to be able to stay on top of, oh, I have a YouTube, um, my YouTube revenue, and then I want a subscriptions, and I have a newsletter, and I have a e-commerce, like product stuff, and blah blah blah. There's not really much yet that kind of brings that all together, and there's especially not that stuff that actually is uh fan focused,
Hmm.
so that the community can actually actively work alongside and build from the creator. It's still very much this one way of the creator shouts into the void, and then they see what happens. And so that's where we see the opportunity. We see the opportunity for bundling to bring together these disparate features that a lot of them are single points, single services. They might be a Shopify plugin, they might be something else that are getting traction. So we know that there's value there, but you have to have 30 subscriptions right now. And a lot of people are spending like, it's like, oh, Shopify, get going for $100 a month. And then once you add in like all the plugins that you need, it's like $4,000 a month.
Right.
And most creators, they can't afford that stuff. And then it's not actually properly integrated in a way where they can get insights off of it. So yeah, so we see the opportunities to build a platform that enables creators to do everything that they need to do, while designed in a way that the community can support their favorite creators, and people can find other creators that are like them in very specific ways. So then they can navigate that.
Yeah.
So I would say that's our overall, we're seeing the opportunity.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that creators want a digital to physical bridge. Like one thing that's become very clear as we've been hosting these events and having crypto people meet up is that the projects love the physical events and being able to see their community actualized in front of them as human beings, and the community and fans love it, and so in crypto, you know that's a more symbiotic relationship where when it comes to influencers and some of the people that we want to build for, you know, a lot of the messaging from an influencer to their fans is still pretty much one way. And so what they're actively seeking out is ways to aggregate input from their community and then actualize that through real world experiences, building this digital to physical bridge, which obviously with the NFC stuff that we're doing provides a really unique opportunity. You know, I was at my niece's birthday party a few weeks ago, and somebody was telling me, you know, the thousands of dollars that they spent for Taylor Swift tickets, or actually what they said was the tickets in Dallas were going for like several $1,000s, but we noticed that in Paris you could see her for $80. So it actually was cheaper for them to fly to Paris and see her than to buy the whole family tickets in Dallas. But what a really cool experience that they had that their daughter was wearing at this birthday party was Taylor Swift fans. Basically they make these little beaded bracelets that has the name of their favorite song, and so all of these little kids at the Taylor Swift concept will have like 100 bracelets up and down their arm. If you ever a part of the 90s rave scene, it's kind of like Candy Kids is what it looks like. And then what they do is they go around the whole concert and they trade these wristbands with people, and they say, what's your favorite song? Okay, here's that song. I made you my version of that song in this bracelet. And it becomes this really interesting way to interact. But you could imagine if that had some kind of NFC tech in it that allowed them to then extend that relationship beyond the one physical thing, and really build these salient relationships that last over time rather than in a pocket of time. These are the type of things that, you know, many artists and influencers are interested in engaging and creating, because it becomes something that's salient. It's an emotional memory that people are going to remember when they're 80 years old. Oh yeah, I remember going to the Taylor Swift concert and swapping out those bracelets. And so I think there's an opportunity to really drive some kind of digital to physical bridge where we're empowering creators to do cool stuff like that aggregates a community in a physical space, but then keeps them connected in the digital world as they go off into their own various regions of the world. Would you agree with that assessment or add anything?
Yeah, so earlier I said there's two primary parts to making a successful startup. One is identifying a real problem, creating a solution, and the second is riding the larger wave of everyone realizing they need that. But there's a third part for why a specific startup will be successful, and that's what we call the unique value proposition. And so so a lot of people are presently having the same realization that we are right now or about to. But what we are offering as unique value proposition is this physical community event stuff.
Yeah.
You know, buy a t-shirt, translate that into physical events, physical relationships that then can be extended online and vice versa. And so that's our hypothesis. That's the part that a lot of these other things I'm very confident that it's happening. This is our hypothesis. We're seeing a little bit of it. We're not seeing a lot of it right now, but I think that this is like the fairy dust that will actually make everything click and allow us to stand out and be able um to find a niche
Yeah.
and then go from there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. So there's really kind of two things that we're talking about here. One, we're talking about kind of a larger product that, you and I have spent a lot of time kind of outside of NF Treasure talking and researching and meeting with VCs and trying to understand where the opportunity is. And so there's some time, financial investment and network effect that we want to bring to a larger opportunity. So maybe you can talk about some of the key features that would be in the roadmap of that, and then we can then talk about the long-term vision of this larger project, and then how NF Treasure fits into that larger project.
Yeah, so a lot of the features on a concrete level are the things that you've been talking about for months or that we've already started to incorporate. So for example, like really centering NFCs um, into the products and thinking about how do you make a physical object a way of somehow having an interaction with people in the real world that then opens up new opportunities. So what we have on our roadmap right now is we have a number of prospects that you've been communicating with that have specific um, sort of I wouldn't call them products. I would call them like experiences that they're interested in using NF Treasure to deliver. And so as you're bringing those to me, I'm thinking about, okay, how can we productize this and basically have this so it can be scalable and be offered to more people. So there's that part. There's also the part from your background, your experience in understanding like local advertising and business, as well as marketing and those aspects where we will be developing um, we'll be developing experiences that really tap into specific psychology of different groups, different fan communities, and then going and being able to sell those things to the appropriate creators or brands. So that's kind of, I would say that's kind of the primary, like what's on our plate in the short term is doing those things from the feature perspective. And then the other part is, really looking at where are the opportunities for delivering this sort of information that creators can use in order to more effectively build their brand and their communities. And so there's a bunch of things that we have on the roadmap in that. And the key part there is making it so the communities are actively getting involved in the growth. And so you've already talked a little bit about, you've hinted with some of this brand stuff on NF Treasure of how people will be able to back brands, and then that will open up services and features. And so that's also on our roadmap to start doing that. And that's with like those details of what those sort of services are and how people can get involved. It's what we'll start talking about a lot more over this next 2 to 3 weeks as we start prioritizing that. So I'd say from a feature perspective, that's really what's on the top of mind for myself. Is there anything that else that you think is important to bring up right now?
Yeah, I think, the creator brand points, which is kind of what you and I have been referring to it as, and as I've mentioned it in a few communications to the community, is basically this idea where there's a translation between your key levels and these creator brand points, and an opportunity for you to earn additional revenue by backing these projects, and you help those brands unlock additional promotional features. So we won't get too into the weeds of that, because I can do a separate video on all of that, and kind of showcase what some of those formulas look like. But the idea is that staking your key levels to a brand opens up a type of interaction with that brand that is meaningful in helping them define what their brand is and what type of products they put out. And so this could be everything from elevating designs from the community to be part of the official brand collection. It could be us providing, in the future, insight on what type of designs, color schemes, styles people are searching for, and providing that as feedback to designers for what type of trends they can be designing into that has an active audience. And so when we talk about AI driven insights, it's basically aggregating feedback from the community, who is providing that feedback because they feel incentivized to do so through this key staking and the brand point staking. And at the same time, using AI to lull and extract meaningful insight from all of that. And then continuing to build out some of the back end scan stuff for the NFC, where we can be creating user generated content, and having brands define the type of user generated content that they want, so that their brand pages and their product pages can have that content, which ultimately increases their conversion rate, which makes their ads work better, which means that everybody makes more money off of that project. And so there's a flywheel to all of this, of how being able to effectively extract meaningful data and insights from your community, and then rapidly incorporate that into what you're producing, whether that be content, products, or otherwise, allows everything to convert at a more accelerated pace. And they some of I think NF Treasure is like the testing ground where we're playing all of this, but NF Treasure is the Web3 brand. We will be using NF Treasure to build revenue around crypto projects by integrating all of these other blockchains, by working with the foundations at each of these different blockchains, by onboarding the top projects of each one. Everything that we're building allows for an easy onboarding of that. However, like we were talking about, the opportunity is moving beyond being Web3 centric. And so we feel that there's a potentially larger opportunity to service more than just Web3 brands, and that will potentially live as its own entity and its own feature set, that is somewhat beyond the scope of NF Treasure, while still housing NF Treasure and seeding NF Treasure with that technology, so that we can continue to grow revenue through NF Treasure, and have that, kind of do the same thing where we're collecting feedback, and allowing that to seed a larger idea. I may be getting a little convoluted there, so maybe you can clean some of that up for me. But what I'm trying to convey is that NF Treasure and potentially this larger thing are two separate projects, and NF Treasure will continue to be the focus of what we're building for the Web3 space. But there's a larger opportunity that I think we've now properly defined that we want to start also building towards. And some of that is using our own time and capital to start creating that opportunity.
Yeah, totally. So how I would frame it is, as we discussed earlier, um, we're at a position where we can really start thinking about things in terms of business nuts and bolts, and thinking about how we can align with that larger picture. But as I said, building the great thing about crypto is that you do have early adopters that are very technically savvy. And so another piece of building a successful startup is it doesn't matter what your strategy is. It doesn't matter any of that. If you don't have a targeted early adopters and build to solve the problems of those early adopters and validate that what you have people will pay for and then expand from there, you're going to run out of resource and you're going to be building a lot of stuff that you don't know whether that's correct or not. And so from what we've been discussing, we're in a really great position with NFTREASURE because you've developed so many relationships with so many projects and so many chains that you've been kind of holding them arm's length until we're done with this next phase, or this phase that we're almost done with, of launching our new store with a better creator, integration with everything, etc. And from there, it gives us a lot of fertile ground to treat all of crypto as the early adopters.
Mhm.
And so we have these ideas that we want to experiment with that we think have larger um, opportunities into the more mainstream, but we're going to be testing those within the NFTREASURE project. And you've already validated a bunch of stuff that just by delivering on where there already is demand, we'll be able to get financially sustainable over time and give us a launch pad to then being able to do this larger thing. However, that larger thing is going to take substantially more resources and time from a lot of different people, which is why we are looking at it. Probably needs to be a separate entity. It definitely needs to be a different brand, et cetera, and have a structure that is aligned to being able to pull in the right talent that's needed to be able to take advantage of that larger opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess maybe a good way to phrase it is that the end goal of NFTREASURE has kind of always been, let's make sure that the people who are early adopters in this platform and that have been supporters for 3 years and going have mailbox money at the end of this, where we continue to grow the revenue month over month, and your V treasure and key levels basically allow you to extract 10 to 40% of that revenue and have this kind of residual mailbox money delivered to you on a regular basis. I think that we're on track to be able to deliver that. But what we're talking about is the difference between, 80 to $1,000 a month in mailbox money versus, you know, I think what we've outlined is our swinging for the fences home run project, where it's like, what's the opportunity to attract seed investment, from some of these VCs that we're networking with, or figure out how to structure a seeded investment in a more decentralized way, but do it in a way where we can grow an even larger team and move faster and dial in towards this larger opportunity under a brand that fits the larger opportunity rather than what NFTREASURE is, which is primarily a Web3 focused brand.
Yeah, and just to get a little bit more specific, so I've been really looking at the numbers around like our projected revenue and how that splits out. And basically like the APRs that we're kind of looking at are like 35 to 50%, like somewhere around that. So which I mean is really good in terms of a real world it's a real world thing. And so when you talk about mailbox money, we're at a position now where we're growing increasingly confident that everyone who's invested, they're going to have Um, that's you know, uh, we're confident in the goal of being able to deliver on that. Um, but like you said, this larger opportunity, it's a unicorn level is the goal with that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so what we want to do is basically start structuring what it could look like to basically have NF Treasure early adopters have access to this new entity and ownership in this new entity. And as we talk to VCs and our consultant friends and analyze kind of how other deals are structured, it's going to be something like, 15% a stake in this new entity goes to VE treasure holders and 15% stake goes to key level holders. And we're working with our legal team right now to basically determine whether or not there'll be some kind of a KYC that's there. And obviously it's going to be optional. You don't have to do it, but in order to get the opportunity and in order for us to actually raise real capital and do it in the right way where it can be a unicorn, there's likely a KYC where people are going to have to disclose who they are so that they can actually have real ownership in something. And so we're looking at the legalities of all that and the right way to structure it. And if you don't want to do that, then NF Treasure will continue to be what it's been positioned as, which is a mechanism for fairly distributing e-commerce revenue. But in addition to that, we just feel that it would be a disservice to the community to not take all of the research and knowledge that we've gained in our own personal research and in our own networking with all of these high profile entities that are crunching on this problem and build towards something that does have unicorn potential. And so I guess ultimately some of the reason for having this video is in introducing Mikkel to the community. He's going to I don't want to promise Mikkel's at your access to Mikkel, but to some extent you're going to be seeing more of Mikkel, and he's going to be helping me kind of disseminate information about where we're at, what we're building, maybe some kind of a build log, et cetera, and become part of the community management process. Because my goal is increasingly becoming being on phone calls, networking, like driving sales, really putting together unique opportunities. And we're moving beyond the, hey, let's make sure that we get all of the NFT projects on Avalanche onto Avalanche, and moving more towards how do we get in the boardroom of these major brands. How do we really structure deals that are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars over a period of time, rather than what we've been doing as we build, which is kind of nickel and diming everything. So does that seem right? Did I kind of lay that out properly?
Yeah, and so I want to talk a little bit about the logic of how we're thinking about things. So, in the VC world, uh, there's specific stages of startups, um, and what round of funding you're raising, and there's specific goals that you're meeting in order to graduate to the next round. And the key one that you want to reach at least is Series A, which means you've demonstrated that you have product market fit and you're ready to start growing. The round before that is the seed round, and the seed round is, it can vary a lot, but the key thing is you've built something, you have a hypothesis, you built something to test it, you're now positioned to be able to then go and find the market to then be able to expand. And so basically how we're thinking about things is that everything to this point is really been in the seed stage. You're trying to find exactly like, oh, what are the pieces that make sense? You're like, what are the technology that we need to build, what will people pay for, etc. And once we release the next version, and once you go and you start closing all these deals that you've been preparing for so long, then from a VC perspective, from an outsider perspective, they'll be like, oh yeah, you're now ready to go into Series A. And generally speaking, when you're raising a seed round, it's for 20 to 30% of the company. It used to be always 30%. Now it's often closer to one, actually even 15%, 15 to 20%. But the way that we're looking at is let's do 30%, because number one, we've gotten a lot of support from the community. It's not just handing over money. And number two, our goal is to ideally not even have to raise from VC if we don't have to, and get grow fast enough if we don't have to. But B, even if we do have to raise for VC, not like only do like one or two more rounds. And so really giving the community as much as possible of that will fit within that model. Like
Yeah.
if we gave even more, if we gave any more than 30%, literally no outside investor would invest.
Right. And the reason that it's important to be able to have that as leverage when we're talking to VCs or outside investment is that the whole point of getting that investment is to achieve some kind of escape velocity and on an exponential curve. And so, we're really at a place where it's like, okay, we could have a really good $5 million a year business, and that's what NF Treasure could be, and that would be an incredible success by all standards when it comes to what we built in crypto and what we promised in the white paper. But why not swing for something bigger when we can still build that way? We'll still build that business. NF Treasure will still be the Web3 e-commerce brand, building this digital to physical bridge for all of these different crypto projects. But by now giving a 30% stake to the biggest supporters of NF Treasure in this larger thing, it just means that there's a potential exponential curve that is available on the back end of that goes above and beyond just revenue distribution.
Yep, 100%.
And let me just say that, like, we're still working out the legalities of all this. So I'm going to put in a legal statement here so that my lawyer doesn't absolutely crucify me. But we will figure out how to make all of this fit within the right regulatory framework, and we already have some really good ideas about that, what that can look like, and it's actually not as scary and a lot simpler than it's oftentimes made seem in the crypto world. So just know that we're definitely deep into researching what that looks like and how to do it right as well.
It's like, I've made this comment, like in crypto, everyone bends over backwards to try to say this is not a security. And I'm like, that's not what you have to worry about. You have to worry about the anti-money laundering laws. I've been
Right.
saying that for years, and now all these people are getting sent to jail on anti-money laundering, and
Right.
and the security stuff's not as big of a deal, especially if there's mechanisms that we can tap into to do that the right way.
For
So
sure. So we have a team that's helping think about that, and so we'll share more as that process unfolds. And the we don't really know how quickly this is going to happen. For all practical day to day, we're going to keep growing NF Treasure, and we're gonna hit that goal of NF Treasure being a successful platform in and of itself. But we're going to continue to remain in the laboratory on this larger opportunity and strike when we feel the opportunity is right to do that. And so, to some extent, it's business as usual. with the caveat that you're now going to be receiving a little bit more feedback from the actual development team, so that you know that I actually have sound reasoning in the team behind us, and I'm not just saying a bunch of stuff out loud. um I think for my nervous system, it's important to showcase the competence that comes with Mikkel and Joe and the team that we built around this. Jordan, who many of you have met on the design side, we've really attracted some top tier talent, and we have an incredible community in everyone that is watching right now. And it's just become so obvious now that I'm in this mastermind where they're basically teaching people how to attract top tier talent and build a community so that VCs will invest in you. And for me, like, light bulbs just go off every time I'm in one of these calls, because I'm like, we already did all of this. Like, we're ready to capitalize on that. And we have literally built the structure that VCs are salivating over right now. And so we'll continue to play out those leads as they come. And there's a lot of really cool things in the pipeline, as far as projects that want to partner with the NFTREASURE and build out these unique NFC experiences. But yeah, I guess the purpose of this video was just to highlight that in addition to what we've highlighted in the white paper, there is going to be an exploration. There already is an exploration and activation on some larger ideas that we want to make sure the community is also involved in.
Yeah, totally. And something I want to underscore is, both Joe and I have worked for multiple successful startups, including unicorns, from at a very early stage. And so we've seen firsthand what it takes in order to succeed, and also the level of talent and etc. And so we have that. And also, John, you've done a really good job of pulling together on the design side, and the support side, talent that is on par with like what those places have as well.
Yeah.
With a cost structure that's much lower than than it would cost
Yeah.
if we were in the valley. So we have a good team, we have a good foundation, and then you know one thing I do think I want to say here is, you were like, oh, it's business as usual. It's like things are about to get accelerated a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So in a few weeks when we release the platform, it's going to go a lot faster,
Yeah.
and um we're going to push hard for um for really all of you watching, all the early people, to have opportunity to get rewarded for being early, because we're planning on accelerating very fast, and expanding out of that small circle. So we want to this is kind of like um I wouldn't say a warning, this is a heads up that that's going to happen over the next few months, and this is a period for us to really get a temperature check, and um and for people to decide how they want to participate in the next phase.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I guess the final thing is just, you know, this video is for the early adopters, the key holders at this moment in time. And so just kind of sharing with you a full status update on where everything is at. Um, so that you can understand the additional utility that is coming to VE Treasure, your key levels and your voting escrow. So we'll roll out some documentation around that to help people better sink their teeth into it. But you know, the front end messaging is going to be moving away from um hey, be an investor in the game or be a participant in the game, and more towards become a creator brand. Because ultimately the goal now and the opportunity now that the tech stack is built is to make sure that we're building significant revenue on the back end for the people that are here. And whether we mint out the rest of the keys or not, eventually Treasure hits its supply cap, and we, I think we'll mint out those keys relatively quickly, because we will have a back end trickle of information that kind of take that orange pills basically people into our platform. So it's the mullet strategy of, hey, join to be a good creator brand business, but in the back there's this DeFi party that's happening, and we've kind of always in our conversations as a community talked about that mullet strategy, but we ended up doing a reverse mullet where we talked a lot more about the DeFi game up front, and the creator brand stuff kind of took a back seat. And because of that, and that was necessary because we needed the resources to actually build out what's going to allow creator brands to thrive. Now that we're going to be releasing the tools that allow creator brands to thrive and allow those ad spends to have a deeper return on ad spend, we're going to flip it back the other direction and make the focus creator brands with the DeFi aspect on the back end. And it's going to become like a secret club that you get seated once you've bought something through an email campaign and through various mechanisms in the NFC chip that clues you in to the fact that you can be a creator, an owner, or a participant, not only in NFTREASURE, but in each of these specific brands as well. And maybe you can unpack that from your perspective as well, Mikkel, just so we cover all bases.
Yeah, so one of the major trends that's been identified within this creator economy is community rewarded, like community ownership is what they call it. It's not necessarily all ownership, but it's the rewards for participating in that. And so that's something that, we're definitely incorporating. And so everyone that's an NFQ holder or a VE treasure holder, they're basically benefiting from the NFTREASURE platform as a whole. And as we get these other things set up, that ecosystem as a whole. But then within each creator brand of that community, there's going to be incentivization to support those communities and get rewarded. And a lot of that interface is going to be greatly simplified. So people won't have to participate in the DeFi game in order to do that. And so that's sort of the what John was alluding to when he was like, they'll discover these other entry points on the back end.
And to be very clear, the reason for that is because all of our data showcases that we have too much onboarding friction right now. There's too much of a convoluted message, and so by dialing in towards building a creator brand and then letting people understand how the DeFi game allows them to enhance their creator brand through promotional tools, through feedback from the community, and by being able to actually earn prizes and revenue from each of these brands, it's an easier way for us to get a return on our ad spend. Because ultimately, we've talked about this many times, but where you want to be in e-commerce and really in any platform is you want to have negative ad spend where you know that for every $10,000 you spend, you're going to make at least 12,000. And because of that, it allows you to rapidly grow and expand your user base and ultimately your revenue because you're basically able to buy attention at a negative impact to your revenue. And so we have to get to that place of a delta neutral or negative ad spend in order to maximize the opportunity here. And then we can orange pill as all of those people. Once somebody is in our ecosystem, once we have their email address, once they have a product that they're scanning, that's where it becomes a salient way for us to onboard them into this secret club, and for us to orange pill them into some of the crypto elements of that, but also building out new functionality that means that they can engage with some of those features without having to actually do all of the DeFi crypto stuff. And there'll be a relationship between the assets currently in the game and some of these more centralized assets that we'll talk about in the future. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is normies need an easy way to engage with this, and not everybody is a DeFi expert. And though we have a very crypto fluent community, what our ad numbers showcase is that most people don't get it, and they need to slowly be brought down the rabbit hole. And so we're working on a messaging and email campaign that will do that hand holding, growing the value of both the DeFi ecosystem and the platform as a whole.
Yeah. And ultimately putting the focus on like principles and the ethos, and moving away from the direct interaction from the technology for a lot of people.
Yeah. Cool. So that's probably as good a place as any to close this out. We've gone a full 90 minutes, and so I appreciate everybody that tuned in this long. Hopefully, it was exciting to kind of hear from Mikkel what's actually being built, and for this video to have shared, space and intelligence and empathy from him as well. And we'll be rolling out, some levels of communication that you can have with him over the next weeks and months as we roll out the new version of the platform and the beta testing. But yeah, just on a personal level, Mikkel is a great guy. He has been a godsend to this project. We would not be where we are without him. We would have failed without him. I'll just say that. And so on camera, I want to say that I deeply appreciate Mikkel's commitment and just deep level of systems thinking when it comes to how NFTREASURE has been built and the underlying technology. Because we had a lot of mercenary developers before him that did not think about it in that way. They were not thinking about it as a holistic unit and how it fit into larger opportunities. And Mikkel has gone above and beyond his pay scale to make sure that this is a success. And so we all owe a certain level of gratitude to him. But also he's a part of the project. He is somebody who wants to see it succeed because it's interesting to him. And the reason that it's interesting is because of this larger opportunity that it fits into. And so hopefully we've been able to paint that picture for everybody, and you understand that now. And now this can be the foundation that we jump off for future conversations.
Cool. Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate that. And also back at you for for that. You've also really gone beyond your $0 paycheck. Um yeah, I got it to this point, and it's really exciting to see what we can do.
Cool. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll stop the recording now, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.